this is The Craziest Assassination Attempts on Musicians by Maddie Balls.
Is the murdering of someone who is usually fairly famous by sudden or secret attack, sometimes for political reasons. Tragically, a lot of famous musicians have been assassinated, albeit not always for political reasons, but for crazy
Selena,
reasons nonetheless. Tupac and Biggie
Marvin
for reasons
Gaye.
that vary depending on who you ask. XXX Tentacion in a robbery. Dimebag Darrell for unknown reasons. Or John Lennon for religious and personal reasons. Assassinations in the music industry
John
are
Lennon?
always tragic, especially for fans of those artists. But believe it or not, there's actually a lot of musicians who are the victims of attempted assassinations. Whether it be the CIA, allegedly, trying to assassinate Bob Marley, or a crazed fan trying to castrate Justin Bieber. There have been a lot of crazy and
I ain't
surprising
never heard about that.
assassination attempts
Oh my
on
god.
famous musicians. So today we're going to look into some, starting off with Bob Marley. Also, really quick, just wanted to say, I think by the time this video comes out, I should have hit 500K. So I just wanted to say thank you guys. In 1976, Bob Marley had really just started experiencing his peak, touring around the world and making a pretty big name for himself in the music industry. But it wasn't just music, since a lot of his songs actually addressed oppression. So he also became somewhat of a political figure as well. At this point, his band Bob and the Wailers had already released majorly successful projects such as Burnin', Natty Dread, and Rastaman Vibration.
There's the Bob Marley movie. Y'all should watch it. Highly recommend.
As you can tell by his music, these albums had hit songs like Get Up, Stand Up, I Shot the Sheriff, No Woman, No Cry, and War, to name a few. As you can tell by his music and overall vibe, Bob's Jamaican ancestry and culture was very important to him, inspiring much of his iconic music. And at this time, there was quite a bit of political tension in his country. So in an attempt to be the change he wanted to see, Bob Marley announced that he would be performing at the Smile Jamaica concert in '76. As things turned out, in a sad and ironic twist, a big part of the concert being put on was aimed at countering political violence. Political conflict was already heavy in Jamaica. However, since a general election was due in early 1977, things started to heat up, mainly between the supporters of the current administration, the Democratic Socialist People's National Party, or the PNP, and the pro-US opposition, the Jamaica Labor Party, or JLP. Leading up to the election, tensions got so high that at one point in June, the government had declared a state of emergency, which was a big motivator for Jamaica's Ministry of Culture at the time to plan a free concert to bring people together and try to diffuse the tension, notably asking the star Bob Marley to perform. Bob was obviously sympathetic to the cause out of love for his homeland, but he also insisted on a bunch of conditions to try to reduce the link to the PNP. He declared himself politically neutral, and some of his songs had even been banned by the government. Regardless, though, the JLP now saw this as an endorsement of the PNP, especially since the current PNP Prime Minister decided to move general elections up within just 10 days of the concert. However, before Bob could even perform, on December 5th at 8:30 p.m., just 2 days before the concert, things took a very dark turn. While Bob and his band were on a break from a rehearsal, 7 gunmen raided his house, shooting his wife Rita in the head in her car in the driveway. After this, the men entered his home, shooting him twice, once in the chest and once in the arm. They also targeted his manager, hitting him in the legs and torso, as well as one of the band's employees who was also hit in the torso. But by some miracle, there was 0 fatalities. Even his wife, who was shot in the head, made a recovery. Despite the shooting, though, Bob still said that he would perform at least one song at Smile Jamaica, the track appropriately being his song called War. Instead of just one.
I thought if you got shot in your head, it was automatically death. I mean, well, 50 Cent got shot in his head, but that was like his jaw, I thought. Or I think that was Kanye. No, I think it was 50 Cent. Maybe that's where she got shot, like in the lower half, like not like near her brain or anything.
Song though, because the energy that was in the air at the concert, Bob and the Wailers went on to play a 90-minute set for the 80,000 people in attendance, even with an injured arm which prevented him from playing the guitar. And at one point, he rolled up his sleeve to show the crowd his wound, saying, "Bang bang, I'm okay." In an even crazier twist, even Rita came out to perform in the hospital gown because she had just got discharged like 2 hours earlier. Overall, there was reportedly over 200 people on stage, in part allegedly also providing.
Maybe she got grazed. That don't make. That's crazy.
Though, following the concert, the PNP won the election, and Bob Marley self-exiled himself to London for around 16 months, which inspired him to create his next extremely successful album, Exodus. And around 2 years later, he finally returned to Jamaica for the One Love Peace concert, at which he famously brought PNP's Manly and JLP's Siaga on stage for an awkward embrace.
The atmosphere buzzed with energy as Marley took to the stage shortly after midnight. He performed some of his greatest hits, including Jamming, but it was during this song that he made a pivotal gesture, inviting both Manly and Siaga onto the stage, Marley clasped their hands together in a powerful symbol of unity.
But you're probably wondering, who would try to kill Bob Marley? Aside from the obvious political reasons, who do we think was behind it? Well, in a Bob Marley biography by American rock music journalist Timothy White, he wrote that information he received from Jamaican as well as U.S. law enforcement officials led him to believe that a JLP gunman was contracted by the CIA to organize the shooting, allegedly leveraging a local
think the
gang called the
CIA
Salad
did it?
Posse who was somewhat loyal to the JLP to carry out the murder. And there is also other theories saying that like the PNP set him up to be a martyr, sort of like what has happened recently with Charlie Kirk. And while the shooters were never officially caught or put through trial, Bob's manager has said that both he and Bob were present for the street justice that ensued, which allegedly was a makeshift court where some of the shooters apparently confessed and even admitted a CIA link and then were executed. Regardless, there's a lot of conspiracy theories about what actually happened, and we don't know for sure what the motive is, but I wouldn't put it past the US government.
Okay, unrelated. I'm starting to become like a low-key conspiracy theorist. I've been hearing a lot of things. Like most of the time, I ignore conspiracies. So I'm like, what benefit do we have for making this up? Like, are people just making stuff up to make stuff up? However, I need to do some more research. I don't know if the moon landing was real. I need to look it up some more, but I'm just a little concerned. I've been seeing some things, and I'm like, wait a second now. I need that explained. So I will get back to y'all. And then the other thing, I don't know if Helen Keller was real. I'm starting to think she was just like sort of like a folklore, just to like encourage people because it's not adding up. How do you teach someone to speak when they can't hear? How do you teach someone to write when they cannot see? Like it just doesn't make sense. And I know like you're supposed to think these things, like you're supposed to just assume these are real, but I'm like, I don't know. Maybe this is a lie. Or maybe like Helen Keller was a folklore. People just were telling the story so good, people started to believe it was true. I'm like, that makes more sense to me. And apparently she flew a plane. That don't make no motherfucking sense. Um, so yeah. Am I conspiracy theorist? Maybe. However, I'm almost 100% sure Helen Keller was fake. I need to do some more research on the moon landing, but that seems suspicious to me too.
To try to take out a major social opponent in their big old fight against communism. I mean, they used to send letters to MLK telling him to take his own life, so wouldn't be too surprising. And while Bob Marley was targeted for political reasons, I think 50
Damn.
Cent just pissed off the wrong people. 50 Cent first started getting some major popularity when he dropped his
Oh,
song How to
he just
Rob.
jumped to the
In
next
this
person.
legendary comedic diss track, 50 goes at a long list of other artists, undeniably punching up at some names that were way beyond his fame at the time, some of which included Diddy.
Wait, no, 50 Cent got shot after he was like a rapper. I thought he got, well, maybe it's because I just assumed that movie. What was the name of his movie? Was the name of his movie Mini Men? Hold on, let me check. Because I thought in that movie he got shot at the very beginning and then he became a rapper. But I also don't think that movie is like a 100% about his life. I think it's just like little bits and pieces are about his life. 50 Cent movie. What is it called? Is it called Many Men? Oh, it's called Get Rich or Die Trying. I thought Get Rich or Die Trying was about his life. And in that movie, I'm pretty sure he got shot at the very beginning.
Jay-Z, Will Smith, DMX, R. Kelly, and
He went at
even
Will
Mike
Smith.
Tyson. Well, most of the disses were never meant to be taken too seriously. Obviously, some people took offense to his bars, especially since the majority of the song was talking about how he would hypothetically rob or mug each person mentioned. When asked why he made the reckless
Well,
move to make this song, 50 said, "There's 100 artists on that label. You gotta separate yourself from that group and make yourself relevant." And relevant it did make 50, since it got the attention of rappers like Jay-Z, Corrupt, Sticky Fingers, Big Pun, the Wu-Tang Clan, and more, who all responded to the track.
damn.
But not all of the attention was bad, since even Nas invited him on his tour. Nas said, "The way you came out with that record, it felt like when I came out with Illmatic," which is probably one of the best comparisons an
How to
up-and-coming
rob.
rapper can get. However, while everything was looking up for 50, things were about to change dramatically. On May 24th of 2000, 50 was attacked by a gunman outside his grandmother's former home in New York City. After getting into a friend's car, he was asked to return to the house and get some jewelry. So when 50 got back into the car, another vehicle pulled up. When this car stopped, a man got out, walked up to 50's car, and proceeded to fire 9 shots at close range with a 9mm handgun. 50 was hit in the hand,
God damn.
arm, hip, both legs, his chest, and his left cheek. As a result of
They
his
try to take
facial
him
wounds,
out.
50 suffered a swollen tongue, the loss of a wisdom tooth, and a slightly slurred voice. His friend was also wounded in the hand as well. They were both quickly rushed to the hospital where 50 spent 13 days recovering. And just 3 weeks later, the alleged shooter, Daryl Homicide Bohm, who was Mike Tyson's close friend and bodyguard, was found and killed in revenge. 50 recalled the shooting saying, "It happened so fast that you don't even get a chance to shoot back. I was scared the whole time. I was looking in the rearview mirror like, oh shit, somebody shot me in the face. It burns." Aside from the earlier mentioned damage to his mouth, 50 was forced to use a walker for 6 weeks and fully recovered after 5 months. While in the hospital, 50 signed a publishing deal with Columbia Records before he was dropped from the label and blacklisted by the recording industry. In this case, it might not be much of a why someone tried to kill 50, but more of a who. Specifically since he just went at pretty
That's shady. Not why they tried to kill him, but I mean, I guess it makes sense if people had beef with him. But would you have? I don't know. I guess back in the day it was a little different. But just from throwing shots at you in a song, I wouldn't be that vengeful. I just be like, oh, he talking shit. Like, let me get on the record too. But back then, they was like, oh, he talking shit. Let me go shoot that man.
much
What?
every big name in the industry on how to rob. However, shockingly to a lot of fans, it wasn't necessarily connected to that song. Instead, it was his other highly controversial song, Ghetto Quran, which was leaked in early 2000. The song mentions drug dealers from the 1980s in his neighborhood of South Jamaica, Queens, and it was called one of the most controversial records ever laid on wax. I guess it turns out that naming a bunch of sketchy real-life characters from your formative years isn't the best idea, especially when it came to Kenneth McGriff and his nephew Gerald Prince Miller of the 80s drug gang's Supreme Team. And these guys weren't just some small drug dealers. Kenneth was a full-blown drug lord running an operation which boasted more than $200,000 daily sold worth of crack cocaine at its peak in 1987. So when 50 mentioned him on his song Ghetto Quran, he decided to retaliate by sending one of his goons. In an investigation by the IRS, they even linked the murder of Run DMC's Jam Master Jay, amongst others, with 50's issues with Kenneth McGriff and his associates. Years later, after a few run-ins with the law, Kenneth was finally connected to multiple other murders and his incident with 50. As a result, he was eventually convicted of murder for hire, as well as a bunch of other things, and is now serving a life sentence. But these aren't the only issues that Ghetto Quran caused 50. Basis for his future beefs with Ja Rule, Irv Gotti, and the Murder Inc. music group because of their connections with Kenneth. So while 50 did end up eventually reviving his career after being shot and being temporarily blacklisted in the US, it definitely came at quite the cost. And 50 Cent explicitly upset other people. But Justin Bieber just had a psycho fan that wanted to castrate him. I don't know about you guys, but to me, Justin Bieber hate has always been a big thing, especially when he was a kid for some reason. And I think maybe for like when I was a kid too, it was because like people my age were jealous. I don't know what the adults were on, but that's what us kids were on. But the hate train was taken to a complete.
Some people actually hated Justin Bieber. Like, not to that extent to try to castrate the man. I thought people just were like, I don't know, like, why is he so big? Or like, why is he like being like pretending to be black? But I thought it was all like just a joke, nothing serious.
Completely different level when a New Mexico inmate, an ex-convict on probation, and his nephew plotted to castrate and murder the then around 18-year-old Justin Bieber. In a statement given by police, their plan involved targeting Justin and his bodyguard in New York City, with their motive coming from the inmate's quest for notoriety and his infatuation with Bieber. Apparently, the inmate, who was serving 2 life sentences for a rape and of a 15-year-old girl in Vermont, has a tattoo of Bieber on his leg and attempted to correspond with Bieber, who never responded. Apparently, he took the lack of a response from Justin as some sort of aggression, so then he planned to kidnap and murder Bieber. Although, obviously, he was still in jail, so he was
just mad that Justin Bieber didn't respond? That's crazy. Well, I guess you gotta be crazy to try to take someone out anyway.
Just a mastermind. Intending to use the uncle and nephew duo throughout his plan, for some reason he needed them to kill 2 other people in Vermont. The entire scheme to kill a total of 4 people unraveled when the uncle and nephew missed their turn on a Vermont road and ended up heading toward the Canadian border. There, a U.S. Border Patrol agent arrested the uncle because he was found to have an outstanding warrant for a felony parole violation out of New Mexico. The nephew was released, but then he spilled the beans about the murder plot when he called the inmate the same day. Prison guards recorded the call where he spoke in code, referring to the victims as dogs. Police said Mr. Martin confirmed that the dogs would be castrated too, and Mr. Ruan not only agreed, but stated he himself was the one who was going to do the castrating. You might be wondering, what does any of them have to gain from this? Well, apparently the nephew was promised $2,500 per testicle by the inmate, and as a result, the 2 faced 2 counts of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder
even a lot of money. 2,500 per, so 5,000 to take someone out. That's crazy.
To commit aggravated battery. When asked how the inmate who the uncle met while in
Crazy as
prison
hell.
himself was able to convince him and his nephew to try and go through with the wild act, the uncle simply stated that the inmate was a very good manipulator and that he offered money as well as a Vermont farm in exchange for the completion of the request. In the end,
And for no amount of money. Like, I'm not saying, well, I sort of am, but like $1 million, maybe you think about it. But for 5,000, that's crazy. For a farm? Mm-mm. That don't make no motherfucking sense. $5,000 and you just gonna do it? That's an investment. Where did he mention a farm? Is that what he said he's gonna do with the $5,000? I don't think you can get a farm for 5,000 though. I think farms are a lot more expensive than that, especially like just land in general. So yeah,
and all three were convicted for their wild plans, which were thankfully nipped in the bud before anything could even happen. But this is one of the stranger ones because the motive is ridiculous, and the whole guy
Oh, a
being in
Vermont
prison and then
farm.
asking the two people who have
Hmm.
nothing to do with it to complete it for him. I don't know. One of the most ridiculous assassination attempts I've ever seen. And while luckily none of the
Okay. I guess honestly, the farm makes a little more sense, money and the farm, because now you got somewhere to live, but that's still crazy. Yeah, that is a good real estate investment. I wouldn't do it, but I can understand a little more why they would do it. You promising a safe place to live. You can have cows and chickens there, grow your own food, and you got 5,000 in the bank. That's crazy. Someone you know? Nah. If you gonna do it, gotta be a stranger. Not someone you close to for some real estate. That's you ain't got no morals.
suspects were ever able to get close to Justin, Lil Wayne had a much closer call. In 2015, Lil Wayne's career was marked by major legal battles, with Cash Money Records over his long-delayed album, The Carter
Cash
5. Around
money
this time,
taking
he
over
was
for
also
the
facing
9-9.
criticism for his sound on projects like No Ceilings 2. Overall, you could say it was a transitional, turbulent period, highlighting his strained relationship with Birdman and his label while he sought new ways to release music. This led to a lawsuit and the release of his independent FWA or Free Wheezy album through Tidal. But while there were tons of drama-filled headlines revolving around Wayne and his career, a major standout was the assassination attempt. In April of 2015 at around 3:30 a.m., Wayne and his crew were
2015.
riding around in their tour buses outside of Atlanta after finishing a show. Then, seemingly out of nowhere, two of the buses were shot up in a drive-by shortly after the police escort discontinued. Thankfully, no one
Oh,
was
I think I
injured,
do
but the
remember this
buses were
actually.
significantly damaged, with the bus driver saying, "They started at the back of the bus, they shot my engine, my radiator, and then just started shooting all down the side of the bus." Witnesses said they saw two vehicles flee the scene, and also that when the show ended, a group of people tried to confront Wayne and his crew at the venue. Since all of this Birdman
Damn.
stuff was going on, a lot of people assumed that was who was behind it. And about a month later, a man named Jimmy Carlton Winfrey
Oh, this was back when Wayne was trying to get like his all his money that he was owed from Birdman, because apparently Wayne was down bad. I don't actually know if he ever got his money.
also known as Pee Wee Roscoe, who was Young Thug's former tour manager and an alleged gang member, was arrested. He was accused of firing multiple gunshots from a white Camaro at Wayne's tour buses and charged with aggravated assault, terroristic threats, criminal damage, possession of a firearm by a felon, and criminal gang activity. At the time, despite the label dispute, Birdman reportedly told TMZ in July that he was not involved in any way with the shooting. But as the case developed and indictments were released, both Birdman and Young Thug were named. Now, being mentioned doesn't always imply guilt. However, in this case, the indictment alleges that Young Thug made a threat against Lil Wayne, and tour bus shooting suspect Jimmy Winfrey carried out that threat. But there was never enough evidence to connect either Thug or Birdman to the shooting, since neither of them were ever charged with anything. Eventually, the bus driver later sued pretty much everyone involved, and it came out that cell phone records indicated Winfrey contacted Birdman and Thug before he fired shots. And according to court documents, Winfrey
So
even
they were
claimed
both involved.
Birdman should be held liable as a party to the crime, as he believes it was the financial dispute between Wayne and Birdman that led to the shooting. Still though, even with this all going on, nothing ever happened to Birdman or Thug. Just Winfrey was sentenced to 10 years in prison, followed by 10 years on probation after reaching a deal in which he pled guilty to 6 gang-related charges, not the 30 counts which
That's
he initially
crazy.
was indicted for. And eventually, for a whole bunch of legal reasons, they overturned his conviction in 2018. So for a while, it seemed like no one was really going to be held accountable for the assassination attempt of Lil Wayne. That was until the whole bus shooting affair was used as a major point of focus in the Young Thug Rico trial, which is a whole
I
other can of
thought
worms. Because of all of this, many fans theorized that Thug put the hit out, but I think the most logical assumption was that Birdman was behind it, allegedly of course, but that's what most people think. And
I feel like it makes more sense that Birdman was up behind it. Cause what beef did Lil Wayne have with Thug? I never heard of them beefing. Like besides this, cause I do remember when Thug was like on trial. What's that man's name? I can't remember his name, but he was trending a lot because every time he would get on the stand, he was like, I said it, but like I ain't mean it, or I wrote it down, but I just wrote what y'all wanted me to say. I was like, what?
while at least Lil Wayne's shooter was caught, the same can't be said for Rick Ross's. On Rick Ross's 37th birthday, around 5 a.m., he was leaving the dinner with his girl. Around this time, an unidentified
My
gunman
God, who
opened
wants to
fire
be a
on his
rapper?
Rolls Royce as well as the restaurant where he had just been dining. Quick aside
Taking out
here,
everybody.
leaving dinner at 5 a.m. is crazy, but I guess to reach boss size, maybe you have to eat for a few extra hours. And while some reports say he was out clubbing before,
Did you guys hear him? He called him fat.
it's still wild, but regardless, let's get back to the story.
Boss size.
Witnesses said they heard at least 10 rapid-fire shots from what seemed like a high-powered rifle, with some even specifically saying it was an AK-47 or pretty large rifle. It was definitely a rifle. Usually shootings like this use handguns, but I guess Ross is a pretty big guy, so maybe they figured rifles
He
were needed.
said it
While the
again.
bullet spray missed the
Called him
car,
fat.
Rick crashed his vehicle into an apartment building as he tried to drive away. This is where some red flags started to get raised, as of course 50 Cent decided to jump in, pointing out, ha ha ha, fat boy hit the building? Lol, it looks staged to me. No holes in the car. Although, to be fair, there was clearly some witness statements that at least confirmed parts of the story, like gunshots being fired and bullet holes in the front of the restaurant. Allegedly, the shooter fled the scene before police arrived, and Ross spoke to investigators, which again was kind of a tough look on his gangster persona. But in a weird twist, rumors started circulating that the shooting must have been gang-related, specifically with the gangster disciples who Officer Ricky was apparently targeted by after using their signs, symbols, and logos without paying required fees. These further by a bunch of threats towards Rick being posted by the gang throughout the months prior to the shooting, although authorities never were able to confirm a motive for the shooting, so no one really knows why. Soon after this, Rick decided to cancel his upcoming tour, claiming that his promoter was unorganized, but many fans speculated it was because of the shooting. If you remember, this wasn't the last time Ricky Rose almost got assassinated, as his plane was famously almost
This
shot
happened
down
before?
during the Drake and Kendrick beef.
So, thank everybody for all the prayers, but I'm gonna tell you, we on the jet and I'm seeing the fighter jet. I see his nose. It's like Tom Cruise from Top Gun. I seen his nose. I'm seeing him in the cockpit.
What did Rick Ross have to do with the Drake and Kendrick beef? It's not adding up. I don't know. This sounds suspicious to me. Why would someone go after Rick Ross because Kendrick won a Drake? He don't make no sense. Maybe he wasn't. Maybe he lying.
And I'm like, damn.
Might be a lie.
I see his cheeks and nose going back from the G-force. And then, hey man, it happened. You know what I'm saying? I can't say what happened, but it happened. Come on, white boy.
Sound like a liar to me. I can't say what happened, but it happened.
White boy, BBL Drizzy, I know you got the ashtrays in the armrest in that hindsight. That's really dope. Like, some smoking shit, But we safe, everybody.
Did we
So
see
in
the
end,
plane?
it's really hard to tell what is and what isn't true with Rick Ross, which has been quite the
Oh,
repeating trend.
there's
throughout his
pictures of the
career.
crash
And while
landing.
most
Maybe
of
it
these
was real.
assassination attempts have been with bullets so far, this next person decided to use a bomb. Bjork is a very popular artist who is a little bit older, so you guys might not be as familiar with her, but she had one of the craziest assassination attempts on this list. In 1993, a man by the name of Ricardo Lopez became very obsessed with Bjork. He started stalking her and learning every little bit of information
I
about
always
her.
heard that
Kinda
name. I
like
never
Stan
knew
with
who she
Eminem,
was.
He sent her a bunch of creepy letters and all that stuff. Then he started writing a diary talking about how bad he wanted Bjork to accept him and how he wanted to be in her life. According to Wikipedia, he fantasized about inventing a time machine to travel to the 1970s and befriending her as a child. His fantasies about Bjork were not sexual. In his diary, he wrote, "I couldn't have sex with Bjork because I love her." He had a diary that had over 800 pages where he was just going on and on about his thoughts of him and Bjork. Apparently, Ricardo felt inadequate because he was too fat, he had gum hair, and he couldn't get a girlfriend. But I never tried to assassinate anyone, so I don't know why he felt special. But real funny joke.
He was
also
too
an
fat and he couldn't get a
exterminator and had no
girlfriend.
bread, so he was really down bad. He talked about taking his own life 34 times in his diary and made 14 references to murder. He also referenced Bjork a total of 408 times and other celebrities 52 times. 3 years later, while continuing this behavior the whole time, Ricardo found out that Bjork was dating someone
1996.
and obviously got very upset. In his diary, he said,
Ew.
"I wasted 8 months and she has a fucking lover." I'm sure you guys can see where this is going. Instead of writing his diary, he decided to start filming it. He recorded a total of 11 videotapes, with each of them being about 2 hours long. On these tapes, Ricardo can be seen preparing for his revenge, as he got progressively more and more upset
Put on
throughout
a
the
shirt.
tapes about Bjork's relationship, which eventually resulted in him deciding to kill her. At first, he thought about making a bomb full of HIV-tainted needles, but he wasn't smart enough to figure out how to do that, so then he decided to make a letter bomb, which had sulfuric acid inside of a book, so that when she opened the book, it would explode, which is honestly kind of clever for such a dummy. He sent her the letter and then planned to take his own life so that they could be together in heaven. On September 12th, 1996, Ricardo filmed his final video diary called Last Day, where he prepared his stuff for the post office. He then finished filming after dropping the letter off. With Bjork's music playing in the background, he shaved his head, eyebrows, and painted his face. He was also naked. He then said,
scary
"I'm definitely
looking.
not drunk. I am completely not depressed. I know exactly what I am doing. The gun's cocked back. It's ready to roll." Then he shot himself, and eventually days later his body was found. Once his body was discovered along with the tapes, the police were able to piece everything together. Luckily, the letter hadn't made it to Bjork yet, and the police were able to contact the post office across the pond, and they sent a bomb squad to intercept it. The bomb was safely detonated and everything was cool. Ironically, Bjork and her boyfriend broke up right before Ricardo took his life, and the bomb probably never would have made it to her anyways, since all of her mail was vetted by her team. Regardless, this is definitely one of the craziest attempts on this list. If you like this video, you might like my video about music's most disturbing urban legends.
That was a good video.